Inscription is one of the weirdest games I have ever played. With a dash of tabletop role-playing, a smidge of escape room, a pinch of card game, and a truckload of grisly viscera, Daniel Mullen's Games cobbles together a surprisingly functional Frankenstein of a title that is beyond compelling. Mostly. Honestly, you almost can't discuss what makes Inscription a memorable title without lightly landing on some of the key perspective-bending fulcrums it employs, because what quietly lurks beneath the surface of Inscription is there to serve a broader narrative and shirk the stale taste of overabundance and derivation that haunts modern card games. But in subverting the expectations of the player, does it really stick the landing? Perhaps the fact that it even dares to go so far off the beaten path is what has earned my praise. Much like in my Alan Wake review, I think my chewing of the fat is a far better fate than a frustrated sigh of relief when I finally close down Steam. And there is definitely a lot to chew here. You, the player, wake up in a mysterious cabin. Through the darkness, across a wooden table, you lock eyes with a figure that lacks definition, their silhouette lost to the shadows. However, as sound bellows from the form, his eyes glow and warp. As if waiting years for you, he eagerly invites you to sit down and play a few hands of cards with him. The rules are simple. Play monsters that have health points and attack points, immolate weaker creatures to summon forth more formidable adversaries, and destroy the enemy cards so that you may attack your opponent directly. Damage taken directly manifests as a duplicitous, twinkling pebble-like object tumbling onto a scale. Unlike many card games, this isn't a race to hit a specific number, whether ascending or descending. Instead, the scale can tip back and forth as the Ides of War shift between you and your questionably corporeal opponent. To win, you simply have to tip the scale all the way in your favor. But as mentioned, Inscription isn't just a card game. It also delicately folds in escape room, tabletop, and roguelike elements to further immerse you in its uncomfortable brand of horror mystery. Like a cake that is too tall with icing far too thick, it would be easy to look at all of these rich ingredients and say, no, I'll just have a salad. But please, let me reassure you that Inscription sets the tone and paces the mechanics brilliantly, delivering a nearly perfect drip feed of simple mechanics that allow the player to grasp foundational knowledge before saddling you with more. Between battles, your eyes glance down across an unfurled map where you'll advance your figurine forward across various nodes that can enhance your deck. The shadow beyond the map narrates each node, each event, and each fight, often under the guise of roleplay. Truly, I believe this is where Inscription began to pull me in. Certain nodes on the map allow you to blood sacrifice one card to permanently transfer its abilities to another. Other checkpoints have you wheeling and dealing with a lonely trapper for pelts. And during boss fights, the dark entity affixes a mask and immerses in his temporary role. I was frequently floored by how deftly all of the gameplay and design elements effortlessly flowed together. The somber and introspective strums of a guitar harmonizes with the lonely journey of your figurine on the map. But confronting the prospector summons the clanging of dull pickaxes on hard ore, tree branches surrounding and imposing upon your duel. And it was this attention to detail that made the roguelike nature of Inscription shine that much brighter. When you enjoy the setting and atmosphere enough that simply existing in it is a treat, the failure of loss stings so much less. But what happens if you lose? What befalls you should your RNG fail or you flounder under pressure? It's a morose secret that is worth keeping from you here, but it's real weird, which is surprisingly on brand. Additionally, losing feels necessary. As you take your first handful of L's, Inscription begins to explain more of itself and gently nudge you towards success, because at its core, Inscription wants you to kick its ass. It wants you to slam your head into the wall 3 or 4 times until you get the right run of power-ups, perfectly disgusting death card combinations, or just pristine RNG in your first turn of that tough boss fight. When I tell you that you can absolutely break this game with some of the things that you can do, I am not exaggerating. It rewards the player for taking risks and toying with mechanics that run far deeper than they appear, and it creates player satisfaction unlike any game I have played in recent history. Of course, no matter how absolutely unhinged your deck building skills become, winning matches alone is not enough. There are mysteries to be solved inside of your rustic purgatory. At any point when the map is open, you can step back from the table and wander around to peruse the puzzles that adorn the walls. And don't worry, if it slips your mind to poke at these mysteries, some of your cards will have no qualms with giving you a firm talking to. Alright, here we are. The pivot point I warned about previously. There will be light spoilers in here, as I can't really dance around them. Watching beyond this point will almost certainly ruin some of the magic of Inscription, so you've been warned. Okay, neat. Inscription really wants to lean on subverting your expectations. While locked in the cabin, you slowly begin to realize that you're playing as a person playing a video game where you play a card game. Do I sound insane yet? Through found footage, you, the player, discover that you're actually a YouTuber who has discovered the only known copy of Inscription, a PC game based on a real-world card game of the same name. Cue the campy meta-narrative and quirky acting.
They're so smooth! Not sure what they're doing down there at the card factory, but these are feeling good in my hands.
I'm not too prideful to admit that I chuckled with a "what is going on here?" The move was bold and novel. I did enjoy it. As you delve back into playing the digital game based on the card game, you'll receive voiceover lines from the in-game player expressing anguish at playing a boss too often, or reaffirming your choice in rare card picks.
I'm so sick of this boss.
Inevitably, when you beat the final boss, you'll find the game had only just begun. In my opinion, this is where Inscription begins to sully its own momentum a little bit. Through a series of events, you find yourself playing through different versions of the game that we learned in the first act. While visually novel and distinct, these portions of Inscription feel disjointed. Mechanics that I grew to know and love were annexed or removed completely in favor of a new system that better fit the aesthetic. All of the roguelike mechanics were also pulled, which created a feeling of being quickly ushered through moments that seemed painfully aware of their own indulgence. None of it ever really came close to the tone, nuance, and harmony that the first act really managed to cultivate. This is especially true in the second act. Luckily, Act 3 was reminiscent enough that I didn't walk away too soured. As the credits rolled though, Inscription ended as a shell of the game that it opened as. And I think there's a lesson in here about subverting player expectations. To be able to successfully pull it off, developers need to truly understand the DNA of their art and why that speaks to an audience. I certainly signed up for the card game, but I also signed up for the atmosphere and aesthetics that were marketed to me. I look back at my first hours with Inscription so fondly that I recommend it purely based on that, regardless of whether you may or may not enjoy what really lurches behind the curtain. On the other side of the same coin, I can't help but lament over what really could have been. Hell, maybe I only think I wanted more, and the brevity of our wooden imprisonment is what made it so impactful and special. No matter what, I have to give credit to the developers for having a vision for the title that forgoes the expected, even if that vision steps on the toes of what was so good initially. Because trying new things is inherently messy. It doesn't always pay in spades, but much like the cautious player nudging their figurine along the parchment, you may just stumble upon a combination of elements that turns out disgustingly good. Inscription will forever be one of those titles that causes me a happy twinge of nostalgia, as there's truly something special here. Rarely have I found a game that hits so well that I have to fight the compulsion to return, even once it's all over. Despite missteps in pacing and progression, I do highly recommend that you give Inscription a try if you're remotely interested in card games, puzzles, and/or mystery. Thank you guys for watching this video. Be sure you hit the like button, the subscribe button if you like what we do here, and get your water, unclench your jaw. We will see you in the next video in the greenhouse.